Hi, my name is Stephen Daly. Today we'll be reviewing the article Brainjacking, Implant Security Issues in Invasive Neuromodulation. Defining neurosecurity. Neurosecurity is a branch of cybersecurity, which is the protection of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of neuro devices from malicious parties with the goal of preserving the safety of the person's neuromechanisms, neurocomputation, and free will. As stated, it's not a question of if non-state actors will use some form of neuroscientific techniques or technologies, but when and which ones they'll use. Neuroethicist James Gordon. Today we're just going to be discussing implanted technologies, specifically impulse transmission devices, but I also want to make you aware of other neurocomputer interfaces that are becoming available and are currently available. You can find out more information on those through YouTube, on TED Talks. A variety of academic institutions, include MIT and Stanford, have discussions on these, as well as Duke University. In this presentation, we will review the main contributions of the paper, questions that the author wants us to address, the methods used to gather data, the results obtained from these methods, and of course the conclusion, and further discussion on potential weaknesses and further experimentation and other research in the field. The main contribution of this paper was to identify potential attacks and trade-offs that are required in the implanted impulse generation module. Currently there are over 100,000 devices implanted globally for a variety of reasons, mostly currently for motor function, but there's also potential for neurological and psychiatric disorders. The question the authors wish to address in this paper were: what are the probability of occurrence? What are the possible attack methods that will be used? What are the possible outcomes of attacks? And what are the trade-offs in preventing these attacks? The method to collect data was qualitative in determining the risk assessment. They compared multiple technical sources to identify potential threats, including what the standards the automotive industry is using, standards that the Internet of Things is using, for instance, credit card companies, mobile companies, things along that nature. The probability of attack is extremely low. As of 2016, there is 100,000 patients with implantable pulse generators. The potential for this technology is extremely high. Over 1 billion people could potentially benefit, including people with spinal damage, strokes, Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis. But this is it's rated low because there's only been one case of a murder via electronic medical device cyber attack, and the degree of technical specialization is extremely high. A script kiddie or even a highly skilled hacker would not typically have this knowledge of how the medical device works, or the medical knowledge to deliver specifically a targeted attack, how to affect the behavior of an individual or take control of their motor system. And government agencies have extremely high, I wouldn't say extremely high, but the governmental agencies have required cybersecurity qualification standards that are implemented, and the manufacturers themselves have liability that they take into consideration when developing these devices. So this paper has two categories of attacks. There's a blind attack where the attacker has no specific knowledge of the medical condition or the patient. Um, Potential threat to this could be like turning off the device, um, draining the battery, which is less of a threat. Potentially in the future, as they use rechargeable batteries, can last up to 10 to 15 years. Data theft. Um, They'd usually have to be in the room when the practitioner or medical specialist is downloading the data or uploading the data. So currently that's not much of a threat as they're not continuously connected or transmitting. Overstimulation, the device itself has upper limits, so um, potential to cause permanent tissue damage is relatively low. Targeted attacks, which is where you would need even more specialized knowledge, more so than even just a skilled hacker. You'd need to reprogram the device. You cause depression, compulsivity, addiction, variety of behaviors, whatever you can imagine. Could potentially be done. Motor function manipulation. Um, yeah, we'll discuss that more in the next slide. So here's a quick chart of the potential effects. A lot of it I just covered in the previous slide, so I'm not going to go into it for the sake of time. Outcomes of the attacks. If you go out there and do research, you're going to be astounded by the kinds of experiments that have actually been done, not just theorized, actually done. They've taken like 3 monkeys, didn't use implants, they used the other technology I was mentioning before that uses EEG technology feedback or neuro computer interfaces. And so there's a robotic arm, and these 3 monkeys aren't even aware of each other, but they're sharing their neural output to control. Like one controls the x-axis or the up and down, and one controls the side to side. The other controls the hand or wherever the outcome was. But anyways, it was just amazing how they did it. They had a rat that they trained to push a button and then it received something, and 73% of the time after uploading this information to a second rat, the second rat who's never seen the light or had no reference of the experiment pushed the button, which was crazy. The same outcome could apply to inducing pain, so you could cause a lot of pain and suffering to people. Modifying emotions. Yeah, so you could, just like when they stick like experiments in the distant past, they stuck specific electrodes into the brain, like they acted differently, or people have had part of their um, brain damaged in car accidents, so they're angry, more aggressive, or more passive, just depending on which part of the brain was affected. Modulating reward systems. So this could, you could make someone more likely to become a gambler or an alcoholic or do other impulsive activities, or be less successful in life because they'd be less motivated to accomplish their goals. Secure implant design. So for this product, the trade-offs are going to be clinical outcomes, ergonomics, and cybersecurity. Allowing for wireless connections for doctors to adjust the treatment without invasive methods or surgery is critical to the implementation, as well as allowing doctors and patients to monitor the treatment itself, being able to collect data without opening them up again. In addition, it allows for on-site, patch updates. And so if this technology isn't comfortable, which is ergonomic, or practical, as in you can use it without it being a hindrance to your reasonable hindrance to your daily life, then people aren't going to use it, or aren't going, or even worse, aren't going to use it correctly and harm themselves. And as mentioned, another design issue is the battery life, which is we're moving forward in that and developing rechargeable technology. Addressing threats, you have to work together across industries and regulatory agencies. That was their suggestion, which is actually being done, and we'll discuss that in a quick summary of other articles. Make sure design devices throughout their entire product life cycle. These devices are their cybersecurity is being considered throughout the entire device life cycle. Developing boards to review ongoing standard development. It's very important. Conclusion, it's imperative for all involved, including researchers, clinicians, manufacturers, and regulatory agencies, to work in concert to prevent brainjacking or malicious effect. Two weaknesses of this paper was, not to fault of their own, was qualitative data available, which I discussed earlier. And the second was this technology is in its infancy, so there's a lot of potential threats they may have missed that will be brought to light in the future. Two additional research projects I suggested was research other non-implant neurocomputer interfaces and their vulnerabilities, and investigate the types of encryption that would be appropriate for medical devices in the future. Here's my cited page. The top one is the article I actually did, and then the other are, there's just so much research in this area right now. It's kind of a hot topic. So yeah, and then the other two articles are, so summary of other research papers. Potential cyber risk can be in terrorism or cyber attacks, hacking prosthetic limbs, if it becomes common within society of even non-disabled individuals to have computer interfaces, send people into comas or hallucinogenic states, taking control of state officials or military personnel. DARPA has definitely considered these in research I've read. Malicious reprogramming therapies, altering behavior and personality, which we discussed, implanting false memories, which could be, not out of the realm of possibilities in research that has been going on, which I don't have time to go into. Stealing memories, ideas, passwords, secrets, ransoming these memories or secrets, influencing perception, language, judgment, etc., deleting memories as technology progresses. And then this was the second article that I was looking into, and how this is actually entering civilian ecosystem or society, how this technology is coming in and the likelihood of it becoming common. It actually began right where we started with the medical research and paraplegics, amputation, that kind of thing. And then DARPA, of course, became very interested in the military application of it. And then you'll see kind of a cycle of a spillover as MIT and Stanford and other research institutions like Michigan and Duke and University of Chicago contribute. It'll spill over into civilian and just kind of continues like that. So I just wanted to include this last slide discussing how specifically in the United States how agencies work with manufacturers to ensure quality standards. So it's not one agency that's responsible for developing these standards. So it's the Food and Drug Administration, which is part of the Department of Health and Human Services, um, which has tons and tons of policies they have to go through to develop um, medical devices. The Healthcare Delivery Organization and even Department of Homeland Security has a say in how manufacturers, the quality standards that they have to meet before these can go to market. And the medical device manufacturers themselves are ultimately liable, so they, not the government, are doing the tests on these, similar to how it's being done in the pharmaceutical industry. And the Health and Human Services has a reporting hotline for attacks.